So what I'm going to do here is study the impact of solar energy on this proposed tower development. I'll be doing this very early on in the conceptual design phase. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Add-ins tab in order to access the Solar Radiation Technology Preview button. Before I start the calculations, I'd like to prepare my geometry so that I perform a more efficient and useful analysis. What I need to do is mark many of the buildings on my site as shading only before I run the analysis. I can do this one surface at a time in the analysis dialog, but to speed up the process, I can pre-tag some of the buildings as shaded before I open the analysis dialog. By entering shade in the comments section of the context building mass properties, these buildings will only have a limited involvement in the calculations that I run. Any surface marked as shading will not have solar radiation calculated for them, but they will impact the calculations for other surfaces that are marked as analysis. Now that I've added the comment to my context masses, I'm going to launch the analysis dialog by clicking the solar radiation button. What this does is brings up a dialog that you can see displays only the mass elements that are available in your project. You'll also notice that all of the context buildings are already turned gray, which indicates that they are only going to contribute as shading surfaces. If I right-click on one of the faces, you'll see the other options for tagging each surface. So if I've made a mistake or need to do some fine-tuning to my surface definitions, I can still do this once I'm in the dialog. What I'd like to do now is take some of the buildings which are farther away from my building site and mark them as ignored. These buildings are far enough away that it's not necessary for them to be involved in the calculations at all. This will help speed up the process and prevent Revit from having to do unnecessary calculations. Now that I've got all of my surfaces set, let's go through some of the calculation settings. I'm going to start by selecting a weather data file. I'm going to get the appropriate weather data for my site, which is Boston. You'll also see that the plugin has automatically installed weather data for a variety of locations. But if you should find that your location is not in the folder, you can download additional weather data files and add them to the list. Next, I'm going to look at the time span for my calculations. I have a lot of presets here to make it easier to set the time. I'm going to select summer solstice, and you'll see that the date is automatically fixed and set to read only, since this is a fixed day. The time range takes on some default values as well, but I can adjust those manually, or I can simply click the sunrise to sunset button. And again, these values are automatically set for me based on the weather data file that I selected before. I've also got some legend options in this dialog. I'll demonstrate how changing those values affect my calculation later when I run the calculations. And then there are output settings. I have screen or printer as my two options. This will be used to adjust the image quality of your captured images, but you should be aware that higher resolution images, when saved to the project, may quickly increase your project file size. So you should be deliberate about when you choose screen or printer. Now I'll hit the Calculate button, and by default, all it does is treat each surface of my building as a single surface. But I can change the detail level with the slider here and start to divide it up into smaller chunks or subsurfaces. I'm going to refine it a little bit more, and once I'm comfortable with the number of divisions, I'm going to hit the Calculate button again. My solar energy analysis is calculated and mapped onto the surfaces of the building. Now I'll refine the surface division one step further, and what you're going to see is that if I don't click anything else, Revit automatically starts the calculations in the background, and you'll see the word pre-shading show up above the slider. Once I hit the Calculate button again, Revit completes the analysis at a faster pace, and you see the progress bar indicating percentage complete. Once these calculations are done, you'll see the colors update on the building. Now that I've got a visual display that I'm happy with, I can still make some minor adjustments by going to the legend options. I can change the data readout from cumulative to average or peak, and I can also change the legend units, which you'll see reflected here in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. When I'm finally happy with the results of my calculation, and the display of those results, I'll hit the Publish to Project button. First, I'll get a naming dialog in which I'll name the image as I want it stored in my project and hit OK. Now you'll see that when I close the analysis dialog and go back to my project, I have a rendering section in the project browser. This is where the captured images are stored. From here I can place the image on a sheet, print the single image, or export the image for use in another photo editing or presentation application.